Alright, so at this point we have our bones done. Our arms can move in a mirrored kind of fashion, right? So if some of you, you might ask, you have a question like, how come my arms are not moving in like a mirrored way like how yours do? It's because you look at my rotation, right? It's angled, it's oriented where the bones, the way the bones are oriented. So it is actually your rotation settings. So if you double click your rotation, right, you just reset your tool and it should be set in object mode. So you'll be oriented to how the object is being rotated. So depending on how your bone is rotated, right, that's how your rotation tool will work. And once it's in object mode, it should start to behave correctly. Okay, they should rotate according to their own rotation, which happens to be mirror image. So next step that we want to do is we're gonna do something called a freeze transformation, just to keep our bones very clean. So in the it depends on how you create your rig. Okay, so sometimes, like especially for the thumb area, right, we duplicate and then we rotate the bone, so your bone itself might have some rotation here. Okay, and we want to make sure that all our bones, right, our rotation is 0. We don't need to care about the translation, but we must make sure that rotation is 0, so that when we animate, right, we will know the default position is the T-pose. So every time you zero out the rotation, you will get the T-pose. Another thing is when I was doing the skinning, okay, as you can tell, right, I hardly, rigging and animation is the process that I hardly do. Okay, I only do it for like if I need to post my characters when I was doing some character art, or if I do some small projects. So I don't really specialize in rigging itself. So a lot of the things that I do, sometimes I'm like, I think it's wrong, and then I undo and things like that. Okay, so one of the steps that I realized when I was doing this particular robot for you guys is that when you have rotation numbers there, and you try to, I can't remember what was it that I did, when you try to skin it or you try to do some additional controllers, right, it will tell you that your bones have a non-zero transformation, meaning that, right, it has some rotation values, therefore it does not allow you to proceed. So in order to make sure that we can carry on with all our steps, right, our skinning or whatever, without any problem, we need to make sure that the rotation and everything is clean. Can you close the door so that we don't hear so much of next door? Thank you. Alright, so let's freeze transform, make it really squeaky clean. So can you go to your outliner, shift click to open up the whole hierarchy, and then select every single bone. How do you select every single bone? Click on the first one, hold down shift, click on the last one. So you're selecting every single bone. And we are going to freeze transform. You guys know where freeze transform are, right? Okay, we're going to freeze transform. So now if you click on any bone, right, you'll notice that the rotation is 0. You don't need to care about translation because it cannot zero out the translation. Alright, but the rotation itself, which is what matters, is 0 now. Very clean. Okay, with that, let's start to skin, which is the fun part. Okay, as you're creating your models, you might realize that number one, you cannot see your bones clearly, right? Some of you, you're like seeing this, correct? And then you're like struggling, like wireframe, okay? Some of you might realize that you're always accidentally clicking on a mesh. Also, it's very annoying. So there are two things that I'll share with you to make your life a little bit easier. Okay, if you go to... That was a very strange yawn. Sorry. Okay, if we go up to the top here, you can see that there are a couple of X-ray buttons. Okay, if you mouse over, there's actually words to help you out. Or you can look at the bottom here, below the word mail. It will display help or tooltips. Okay, so if you mouse over, it says X-ray. The first X-ray is to X-ray your geometry, so you can see through. It's transparent, so it's very good, right, for tracing your 2D work. Okay, so that one, if we got time, I can show you how to do it. The third button, let's not care about the second one. Okay, let's care about the third one. X-ray joints. So you click on it, now you can see your joints, right? Next one is to create layers. We want to create something called display layers, so we can turn on and off objects very quickly, and we can, like, cause them to be unselectable. In your outliner, if you want to hide something, right, you just press Ctrl H. If you want to unhide, Ctrl Shift H. Okay, and it can be found under display, show and hide. Alright, that's where you get your hide. But to me, this is quite leceh. This is only good for when you are modeling and you want to quickly hide stuff. But if you are rigging, right, it will be nice to use something called a display layer. It's like Photoshop layers. You can turn on and off. You can add things to it, things like that. So can you click on, make sure it's display, okay? Animation layer is another thing. So under display layer, click on the plus. And yeah. Oh, it's under channel box. Channel box, right? Below. That's your display layer. So we got channel box, we got inputs, and then we have the very last one, which is layers. So click on the plus, and you get layer 1, right? And if you were to add things to your mesh, let me just quickly add my mesh to show you. You will see that, let's say if you add an object to the layer, right, it will say under inputs there's layer 1. Now if you don't name your layers, right, it gets very confusing what layer 1 is after a while. Okay, you might not even know that it is a display layer. You might think that, what's that thing there that I cannot delete history for some reason. So it's always good to rename your things. So under layer 1, double click the name, and I want to give it the name mesh underscore LYR for layer. So you'll notice a lot of the times when I create materials, when I create textures, when I create all these small things, right, I always have the underscore and says what it is, like blend, Lambert, color, layer, mesh, group. All these things will help you to identify what it is, so that when you see in your inputs or you see in your layers or something like that, you straight away recognize what is that thing that you create. If everything, right, you just say mesh, 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 mesh this, mesh that, right, after a while you'll be like, what's that? What's that mesh? Okay, so mesh LYR, and then let's just keep everything by default and press save. Now we're gonna select our robot, gonna right click the mesh layer and choose add selected object. Okay, so select your mesh, right click, add selected object. So it's in there right now. If you press the V, it's gonna hide the display. Circle one at the side. Oh, can. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, so when you press V, right, you can show and hide your stuff. The letter P here means playback. So what this does is that it's more for animation. If you want to hide your object during playback, for example, if I unclick P, right, and I press play, My mesh will disappear when I press play. So if you want to hide your bones when you view your animation, right, you can toggle the P. Okay, the next one is more interesting. If you click, there's 3 states: T, R, and nothing. So nothing is default, alright? T means template. Template means you see the wireframe, you can't select. So what is the use of this? Besides easy to see, right? You use this to trace stuff. So for example, if you are testing out proportions of the body or proportions of some object, you can actually just use like simple cubes and cylinders, just piece them together just to get the proportion and the size, right? Then after that, you turn it into a template and you model over it. So it's like you're tracing over a wireframe that you have set up. Okay, so usually we use this for proportion, and it's a template lah, alright, just like what it says. R is for reference. R is for reference, and basically you cannot select, it's just for you to see. Okay, so up to you, you want to keep it on T or R, it's up to you. The last one, the slash, is basically color. So you can add colors to your wireframe, which we will talk about next week. So let's just leave the color as neutral. Now, can you select your root and click on a new layer? I learned something new. You can click a circle thing, right? Yeah, and add select object. So usually I don't go and press that. So you can rename. I'm gonna call this joints. LYR. Now can you save your work and then do a save as. We want to save as skin 03 skin. So a lot of times you notice, right, I'll quickly save my work to cement it, and then I'll save as. So it's like a new startup file for me to do whatever. So in case I forget and I just Control S, right, I'm not saving over whatever milestone that I did already. So save in milestones. So if you crash or whatever, or your client wants to make changes, you can go back to it. Okay, so let's select, like for example, my misfortune, I think I have a total of 112 files. Yeah, in total. So it's about 23 gig around there. Yeah. So save, keep saving. Okay, Maya is smaller. Maya, each file is like 20, 30 meg, right? So save. You will get about 100 over or so eventually. Okay, so let's select our mesh here. And we're going to select on the root. We're going to do a skin, okay? So select the skin, select the root. The root is important. And we are going to the next menu, which is the skin menu. And we're going to work primarily in the first 2 regions, okay? So first one, bind skin. Let's click on the options. And this is what you have as a default. Alright? So if you are not sure what to do, you can always mouse over bind skin. And the instruction says select surface and a join. Okay, so select a surface and select root join. Right? And because we combine everything, right? So we cannot really bind piece by piece. In fact, if you do animation, right? For robots, we bind object by object to each bone. So we will bind to the shoulder bone, we'll bind to the forearm, bind to the finger, one by one. So we'll bind multiple times. But because it's games, we want everything to be one piece like a human. We will only have one mesh and one root. Okay, and instead of binding to selected joints, it's the join hierarchy. So this is the default, right? And since it's a robot, technically the parts don't bend, correct? They don't deform like human skin. So we only want one influence at a time, meaning that one bone is going to control one part. Got it? One joint is going to control one piece. The whole piece is going to move together. It's not going to bend. If you have, let's say, two bones, it means that in the case of like human arm, right, your forearm and your arm itself will define the center part, for example. So there's two bones controlling this area. You have a very smooth bend. So the more bones you have, right, affecting it, the more, smooth your bending is going to look, something like that. And of course, the more you have to paint. So in order to save our work, right, it's a robot. We don't want to paint so much. We just want one bone. Okay? And bind. So your mesh is going to turn purple. And I'm going to just reference my mesh so that I don't select my mesh at this point in time. So now, if you try to rotate, you try to move your mesh, right? You notice that it looks good, but there's some places that are not working well. Correct? So it's working okay, but not great. Alright, even for the leg. So what you can do, guys, now is to create, right, an extreme pose. You want to bend every single joint in every single way. So way that it's supposed to bend, okay? So I'm just gonna bend it like this, forward. You want to break your mesh technically. Yeah. So you might even want to rotate the body, move it up, although it doesn't move, but we just want to rotate it up. Maybe this arm we want to bring it down. What we are doing is we are trying to make all the problems show. Oh, yeah, so make sure your arm, right? Your arm don't twist backward, okay? It never happens that way. Okay, it never happens this way. So make sure you bend it forward. You want to also bend all your fingers. So select all your fingers, bend. Okay, that's why I said skinning, right, is the most satisfying part. Because finally, all your hard work is showing. Okay, the other hand, I don't care. Because it's going to be mirrored. Don't forget, right, whatever we do, we're going to mirror it. So we're just going to fix one side. So I have a crazy pose like this. Okay, that highlights all the issues that I have. Now, if you want to reset the position, right, you can always select on your mesh again. Okay, select on your mesh, and there's something called go to bind pose under skin, right? There's something called go to bind pose. So you click on it, it will snap back to how the bind pose was. So this was a default position. So if you want to test and then you can get back to the same place, right, just go to bind pose. If you can't go to bind pose for some reason, then select all your joints and zero out the rotation. Just click and drag and press 0, enter. Okay, so you can just click and drag on all the zeros, press enter. It will also reset. So the good thing is because we freeze transform, right? So we have the ability to zero things out. That's why it's so important to keep it clean. Because otherwise we won't have this kind of very quick way to snap everything back. Okay, so after you have deformed your mesh, problems start to show, right? So this is the time where we need to fix our skinning piece by piece. So there's something called pane skin weights over here. Alright, and there's another thing called mirror skin weights. So don't worry, we will mirror. Alright, so first thing we're going to click on is the options for pane skin weights, and let's just go through the interface for a bit before we start painting. Now straight away you're going to see that your model has turned black and white. Alright, and the white portion means that it's being affected by the bone. So if you have been diligently naming your bones, right, instead of leaving it as joint 1, 2, 3, you can see that, you know, your effort pays off, okay, you know what you're looking at. And when you select, you straight away can see the info, because sometimes certain bones are affecting it when it's not supposed to. So it's very confusing to just look at the black and white and try to figure out which bone it is. So if you name your bones correctly, right, you will be able to see which bone you have turned on and off. Okay, so if you haven't been naming, I think it's best to unbind your skin, name your stuff, then bind your skin again. Okay, so we have my center root. So you can see that the whiter it is, right, it is 100%. So it starts to see like problems straight away, like it's affecting the arms, and that is why, right, there's such weird pooling there. So if I were to paint away, right, yeah, paint skin weights options. You need to select your mesh, then you do that. So you can easily say that, okay, I want to paint away the black. We just add. Okay, I'm just running through the interface so you get a better idea, right? So don't worry too much about what I'm doing at the moment. So if you were to paint away, okay, let's do again. Oops. Okay, paint skin weights. For some reason, it's not selecting well. Okay, never mind. I'll show you the example in a while. So anyway, this part is for you to select the bones, and it will show you the influence, okay, in black and white. So white means that it's being affected. Black means no influence at all. At the bottom here, you have got a paint operation. So we got replace, we got add, we got scale, we got smooth, right? The default is replace. So we want to use add. So that every time we paint, right, we're adding on the values. Okay, so it's a bit easier to handle. Replace means that it will always replace it at a fixed value. So if you set 0.5%, right, it will always paint 0.5%. It will never add or minus. So every time you press, it's 0.5, 0.5. That's all. Alright, so I'm just going to add. And you want to make sure that your brush is perfectly sharp. You don't want any soft brushes because we are doing robot. Robot, everything is like 100% or 0%, right? So you don't want in between. Okay, so a fully hard brush. And down here, we have our opacity and value. So you can see that you have a value of 0 to 1. 0 means no influence, black color. 1 means full white. Okay, so for example, let me see if I can get it to work again. Skin weights. Okay, let's say I want to Yes, it's working now. Okay, let's say I want to paint 0 on all the parts that is not affected by the root, right? So I change my value to 0. You all can see, right? Yeah, I change my value to 0. And this is my brush tool. So I just need to click and drag on the points. On the points, alright? It's not on the lines or on the face. It's on the vertex itself. So you want to aim at the vertex and kind of paint 0%. This is affected by something else, so we just ignore. Okay, and things like that. And you just want to slowly paint away. In fact, right, I don't want to use add. I want to use... Okay, I might replace what? Okay, add law. Okay, replace. Okay, fine, replace. Oh. Yeah, right, so you can slowly paint away all the parts that are not supposed to deform. Very painful, right? And to change your brush size, shortcut key is B for boy. So when you hold down B, right, you can see the left right arrow. You click and drag sideways, you can change the size of your brush. Okay, but what we are going to do, instead of painting one by one, right, which is very hard to reach for some areas, especially for the robot with such huge arms, overlapping parts. It's not like human body, you know, where it's all like very easy to paint. So this one has so many parts eating into each other. We want to use something called flood. Okay, and when you flood means to take the entire model, right, and flood it with a value. So if let's say I flood 0%, everything will be 0. If I flood at 100, everything will be fully white. So how can we make use of flood instead of slowly brushing? We can isolate selection. You guys are familiar with isolate selection? Okay, let me just show you. It's a bit finicky, but once you get the steps right, you realize it's faster. Some of you will say that I think brushing is easier. I just take the brush and slowly brush law. Okay, it's gonna take you 1 hour or more just to get the whole thing correct. But if you use the flooding method and the isolate select, it's hard to use at first, but once you get it down, right, it's just a repetition, and then you can finish it in probably like 15 minutes. The difference is there, okay? So how you do that? First, notice that how to paint, right, is to select your mesh and then paint skin weights, right? So we're going to do technically the same thing, but we want to hide the other parts that are not necessary. So I'm going to go to face mode. I'm going to double click to select the faces that are affected by the root. So let's say this part, okay? Double click and you select the whole piece. Then you go to the top here. There's something called isolate select. So isolate select will temporarily hide everything else and only show this guy. So now it is very easy to use your paintbrush to paint or flood. Just flood it, okay? Don't need to paint because it's very easy. So the trick is, if you were in face mode, right, you need to make sure you get out of face mode. You need to go to object mode. You need to trick the paint weights too, right, to think that you are still selecting your robot. You get what I mean? If you're in faces, right, and you try to paint, nothing happens. It just locks up the model for some reason. So you need to quit your tool, press Q to quit the tool, and then go to object mode. So select your object as though you are selecting the whole robot, but it's just that piece. Alright, and then now you right click, choose paint weights tool, and you try to paint. It recognizes that you are trying to paint a robot. So for some reason you need to trick the program to think that you are in the object mode for the robot. Okay, so now I can just simply change my values to 1 and flood. See that? So again, if you want to change your brush size is B, drag left and right. Okay, the values is over here, 0 to 1. You can flood it. You can change your brush type. So I'm changing it to a hard surface. You can choose to replace or add. In our case, we want to replace either 0 or 1. We just simply want full values, right? And all these are the bones. So that's basically it. So I'm going to show you again how we do the isolate select. And the trick is to work bone by bone. That means after you finish flooding one bone, go to the next one. Even if there's errors caused by other bones, ignore it. Finish working on the root, go on to the spine, go on to the next spine, go on to, and ignore other problems that are still there. After you go through all the bones, right, everything will be fixed. But if you go back and forth, you realize that you undo a lot of your work. So it's very slow. So, okay, let's look at the arm. The arm is one of the worst, right? So I'm going to double click on the faces. Double click here, this part. Double click the ball joint. 3 pieces. I'm going to isolate select. See that? And I'm going to go back to object mode. Trick it to think that you are selecting the mesh. Okay? And then go to paint weights tool. So just right click, choose paint weights. And you can paint, but you can flood. Okay, once you flood, quit the tool. Press Q. Go back to selection mode. And then show all your model, rings, and repeat. Alright, so keep doing, keep hiding, doing, go back to object one thing. So I'm going to quickly show you guys how to mirror your weights, and then we can end off today's class. Okay, before you mirror your weights, right, you need to make sure that your mesh is back to the original position. So it shouldn't be asymmetrical like that. So one way, of course, is to go to bipost, right? Another way is to zero out your rotation. So you can always select all your joints and just go to your rotation, click on all the rotate X, Y, and Z, click drag and press 0. That's how you can zero out. But usually you should be able to just go to bipost. Okay, so once you selected your skin and go to bipost, the next thing that you want to do is to mirror. So it's the same as joints, alright? So you want to choose which axis to mirror and then just press apply. That's all. So you can always play with the positive, negative and see which is the correct side. So if you do it wrongly, just undo. Simple as that. Okay, so after you mirror, just do a quick check and make sure that both sides are working the same. That's all.